Hello everybody and welcome to episode 6 of the Resurrected I Wouldn't As You podcast. As ever, my name is David and I'm sitting 513 miles across from Mr. Alex Aldridge. How are you doing today, Alex, apart from being ready to throw your laptop out a window?
Ahoy hoy! You're getting As the Crow Flies now, which I like very much.
Yes.
Well, maybe not actually.
We don't mess about with you at Wouldn't As You, we just go straight to it.
Yeah, damn right.
No foreplay, straight down to business.
Exactly. Yeah, my laptop... it will probably be heard throughout this recording, so I apologise. I'm working on it.
We're going to have to come up with a character name for your laptop because he's becoming an ever-present.
Yeah.
He's the third member of the podcast, really.
Yeah, he's like my handler. So he's just there all the time whispering to me in only fan tones that I can understand.
Making sure you're wearing your safety gear, knee pads and such.
Yeah, my helmet.
Yeah.
Purple, of course.
Yeah, of course. Always a purple helmet. So yeah, apart from laptop, we're doing good. We're back here today like we've come to speak to you like a political movement. We're standing before you today.
We are gathered here today, dearly beloved.
Yeah, we're here to talk all things Gears of War.
Yeah.
Alex and I have been playing through the OG Gears of War. I think I don't know if you did, but I went back and played the OG Gears of War. But for the purposes of this podcast, we played through the Ultimate Edition.
What effort, though? What effort by you to play the same game? Not all the way through twice. But no, you did. I
just love Gears of War.
Me too.
I just don't think I'll ever get bored of that. It's so simple, but I'll never get bored of that gameplay loop of hide behind a wall and just shoot things in the face.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
it was a blast playing this.
It was. Did you have more fun or less fun than you anticipated, or about the same?
I had less fun because you said co-op was how we were going to play it, and then you decided...
And then we didn't.
Yeah.
Because we can't stop playing Apex.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, well, if you're about, I'd rather play Apex, so let's just bash through this on our own.
Yeah, so I missed you very much, but...
Yeah.
Especially because the AI is terrible.
Oh, Dom is an absolute simpleton, isn't he?
I think, actually, if we go back to what we discussed probably last week, I actually think Dom is worse than Shiva from Resident Evil 5.
Oh, lucky you can't give him stuff because you just never get it back.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about never getting stuff back at some point later on in this podcast. There's some foreshadowing of a gripe.
That is some foreshadowing.
You can hear the gears spinning up before they start grinding. The piss is beginning to boil.
Well, we just dive in then.
Fucking
let's get
do it.
Straight to it.
Yeah, let's go straight into the game because what else are we going to say? We both really like it. It's really good fun.
It is a good game.
Yeah, yeah.
I like to shoot the bad guys.
I mean, with the medium, that was all right. Like, we didn't hate it, but I am looking forward to the first podcast. We somehow managed to get through a game simultaneously that we both hate.
Yeah.
That'll be a good listen. But for now, we're just going to stick to ones we know aren't shite and carry on having fun.
Yeah, well, actually, talking about the medium, that's probably a good jumping on point because you and I spoke about it briefly as we're playing through the game, in that there is a story to Gears of War, but it's not the central pillar of the experience, isn't it? So I was
Absolutely
kind of like
not.
humming and hawing about what I should do in terms of podcast structure. So I decided that broadly I'll follow the same one that we did for the medium, i.e. we'll go through the game step by step, but rather than sort of create the podcast around the narrative, I'll briefly touch on the narrative and then we'll start discussing maybe the standout points from each act.
Yeah.
I think is probably the best way to do it. So for those that, hopefully you've played through Gears of War in anticipation of this hotly anticipated podcast, but if you haven't, it's developed by Epic Games and a bunch of other developers have been involved in it, but the primary developer is Epic Games, published by Xbox Game Studios. It was originally released on the 7th of November 2006, with the remade Ultimate Edition being released on the 19th of September 2019. The Ultimate Edition is actually quite a bit, like, Alex and I were very shocked about this, and I guess we'll come to it just now, but the Ultimate Edition is not just a sort of tarted up version of Gears of War. It's a from the ground up remake for the. So like I say, for the podcast we mainly played the Ultimate Edition, but which includes 5 extra missions that were originally in the PC release of the game and not the Xbox release, and completely remade cutscenes and new textures for the game.
Yeah, what
what
they basically did was all the map layouts are identical to the original game, and then they just dropped an entirely new set of assets on top of everything. And they also kept it in Unreal Engine 3 as well, apparently, because
did they?
They said to re-script everything, like enemy AI and all that kind of stuff, animations, whatever, would be not difficult, but it would ruin the feel of the game if they bumped it up to the new engine. So that's why it still kind of has to be in 30 frames per second for the campaign.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess that also is why it stops it being such a... Like, this is the one thing that we came across, and if you actually look at the two side by side, the differences are stark.
But I didn't really pay enough attention to that at the beginning, but it really is.
But in 2019, when the game came out, I wouldn't say the game looked fantastic. It looks fine and it looks good. Does that make sense? To the point, I think that's maybe what plays into the fact that I was looking at the game thinking, this is just a tarted up version of the OG one, which it isn't. Does that make sense?
Agreed. Yeah, I think the main thing I noticed was there's some anti-aliasing issues with it, where a lot of the edges look jagged. I know that's probably because we were been playing Apex Legends and then jumped straight into this and go from 60 FPS, smooth as butter game into a remake of a 2006
one. 1080p,
yeah.
One other thing that I noticed, and I don't know if you ran into it, so I was trying to think back since the 2006 release, and I obviously played through the game once on my own, and then I think I've played most of it in co-op, and then I've gone back and tried to play it in harder difficulties, and I think this is the second time that I've completed the Ultimate Edition.
Yeah,
and
that sounds right.
I ran into a lot of bugs this time.
Me too.
Did you?
Yes. I'd never played the Ultimate Edition before, but bugs aplenty is what I encountered.
Yeah. The first one being in Act 1 in China Shop, which I guess we'll get to, where you meet the Berserker, and you've got to kite the Berserker out of the building so that you can use a Hammer of Dawn on it to kill it.
Yeah.
And when you get outside, some debris falls to stop you going back tracking through the level.
Yes.
And going back inside again. But the debris fell with me outside and the Berserker inside. So I just had to... I mean, it was job done. I was trying to get rid of the Berserker threat, but obviously the game was having none of that. So I had to restart.
I was going to say, would it just imagine if it had like really adaptive AI and went, well, the Berserker can't get out, so
job done.
Checkpoint.
Yeah. I also find Dom did a good job of doing insta-death in that area quite often.
By that area, do you mean every area?
Every single area,
Fucking
yeah. Like
idiot.
he would, like the Berserker would appear in that section, and then I'd be like, oh well, I better get out of here because this is a tiny room. I'd leave, and Dom would just stay in there with the Berserker, and I'd be shooting the Berserker, try to get it out, and it was just running about, try to punch Dom in the face.
Well, that's quite good. That's handy.
Yeah, she just wouldn't leave the room.
Yeah.
So
that's not handy.
Progress. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I had one in Act 4 where so it was the one I think it's close to home. I think it's around where you're trying to get into Marcus's dad's place, I think. And there was several fights and for several minutes where Dom just left. He was completely gone. I walked around the whole. I couldn't find him anywhere. Every time I issued a command to like come back, he would say, right here with you. But I would only see the text because he was so
lying.
far away. There's no voice. I couldn't even hear him. He was just completely gone. And then he just, popped back when the checkpoint came along. But I had other ones as well. The one when you're underground in the tunnels with the emulsion thing. Mm-hmm. Like after you do the fight against the Corpser, and then the other two guys, Baird and Cole, come and meet up with you. I got confused because I walked past where the boss had been, which seemed to be where they'd come from, and then everyone else just kind of stood around waiting for me as if I was doing it wrong. So then I started to run back, and then they overlapped me and went past me again. I was like, what the fuck? Yeah, the pathing is, for most of these guys, it was not good. They are not useful at all.
Which I guess is where I started this conversation makes sense given the age of the tech the game was built on, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. And why they, as I said earlier on, they didn't want to have to rescript everything because that's a big task in a brand new engine. But that probably would have solved all these problems. And hopefully, if they ever do a remake of Gears 2, they will do that.
I really hope they do a remake of Gears 2. I really hope so. But I think we must be approaching beyond the 10-year anniversary of that game. When did that come out?
I'd imagine
Like
2008.
2003, 2008.
So we've probably
I guess
easily
so.
passed 10 years of it.
Oh yeah, we're long
Easy.
past. Long past. Oh well, another 6-7 years, and we'll maybe get it at the 20-year anniversary.
Yeah. Well, yes, we've digressed a little bit there.
Yeah, before we start Act 1, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the sort of lead up to, because this is one thing I think Gears of War does a really poor job of doing is explaining its story. And
yeah,
I like, don't get me wrong, I'm not about to claim it's some Oscar winner, but actually there is a certain level of fun and engagement to be had with it. So
I'd argue that it actually drops its most interesting story beat right in the epilogue after you've done the final boss.
Yeah, probably.
But you've obviously expanded your reach
Yeah,
of
I've
Gears
read
of War
comic books
outside.
and the
Yeah,
books
so you're
and-
the encyclopedia for this one.
Yeah, so the Gears of War game, this Gears of War game does the same as every Gears of War game and follows its classic 5-act structure. The game
Do they
documents
really
the
all
story.
have 5 acts?
Yeah, all 5
okay.
acts. It documents the story of the human race as it fights for survival following the emergence of a vicious army of monsters known as the Locust, seemingly from nowhere. When I was writing up notes for this, I wrote that following the emergence of the Locust, and I was like, actually, no, it's not just a bunch of minging flying things going about the place. It's a little bit more serious than that.
Yeah, agree. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's set on the fictional world of Serra, which I was actually thinking about this, and I think all it does is serve as a surrogate for the real life planet Earth, except it allows the developers to take a bit of creative license and flourishes to things like geographical formation and
That's
like
the only thing I can think of.
And that rain and stuff. What and is it like? I can't remember what it's called. But
Oh,
there's rain
yeah.
in future Gears games that is basically just like icicles that will stab you flying to the ground and smashing up buildings and stuff like that.
Like razor rain or something, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah, I think you've nailed it. So in the lead up to Gears of War, man has essentially been locked in a 79-year conflict known as the Pendulum Wars. This is a war that claimed millions of lives as the coalition of ordered governments of the Cogs, who we play as, fought against the Union of Independent Republics for control of the planet's emulsion supplies, which again just serves as a surrogate replacement for oil reserves in the real world, I think, as far as I can tell.
Yep.
Having recently won the war between the two sides after an infamous battle known as Aspho Fields, the Cog and the Hammer of Dawn were able to break the stalemate and bring the war to an end. But only 6 weeks later, however, the day that would go down in Gears of War history, known as E-Day or Emergence Day, occurred when a new enemy, the Locust, as we've mentioned, emerged from the ground, started killing humans at will, and for all intents and purposes taking control of the planet, driving humanity to the brink of extinction.
Did they use Emergence Day in the marketing for this? I think I remember rightly that the day one edition of the game was like E-Day version.
Yeah, they did. The Gears of War game, which is kind of where we pick up in Act 1, picks up the game 14 years after E-Day, as we meet protagonist Marcus Phoenix and Dominic Santiago as Dawn breaks Marcus out of a prison that appears to have been destroyed and abandoned during the ongoing war with the Locust, and it's apparently not going very well.
Yeah, it's nice of them as well to have included the Christian calendar in all of this planetary, in Sarah's planetary time deduction.
Yeah, I wonder if technically even Marcus Phoenix is a human, is he?
Well, I suppose so.
Yeah, because like planet Earth doesn't seem to exist.
You're right. He's not an Earthling.
No, he's not.
He's
some sort of alien.
Serenian. Yeah.
Serenian.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what do you? I guess like we were talking about before, Alex, that the story isn't the central factor to Gears, and it doesn't have to be because the gameplay loop is just big, dumb fun.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts of the story from what you've kind of garnered of it? Is it just?
It felt very functional to me.
Functional, superficial.
What's the reason he's in prison? I can't remember.
So there's something, I can't remember the full details, but essentially his dad has got something, his dad and his mum have got something to do with the Locust Horde.
Oh, yeah.
And the guys it is. And his mum disappeared when she went into a tunnel before E-Day. And I actually think it turns out she's maybe the queen.
She might be.
I'm not sure. But anyway, Marcus Phoenix's dad goes off into the tunnels after E-Day, and Marcus disobeys a direct order to go and try and rescue his dad, which he fails, and then he gets court-martialed and sent to prison.
Okay. I mean, when I say functional, I love the setup for what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not necessarily certainly in this first one that the narrative is it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't really go anywhere.
Well,
It's just
one thing I found quite shocking in my head. I thought, in my head, having played the Gears games, it's always obvious that Dom is looking for his wife. She is not even mentioned in the first Gears of War
not
game.
at all.
The only mention she gets is there's a close up on Dom's tattoo that says Maria at one point.
Oh, really?
It's not even touched upon.
That's got to have been put in this version. That probably wasn't in the original.
Yeah, I think it has to be in as well, because when you go to the stranded camp, it's like, oh, Dom's looking for someone, but then never mentions it again. He's clearly looking for his wife, because we know when I've played all the other games, but doesn't ever mention it. It is so weird.
That is weird. They clearly tried to up this in the second game, especially to try and give the characters a bit more of a backstory and a grounding, because at the moment, for most of this game, all it really is there's locust here or there. We need to go do this and kill this. Mm-hmm. But it serves the purpose of moving the game along. But they definitely upped it in later games where they introduced new characters who they developed better. Looking back at characters like Baird, for example, Baird's just a complete dick in this from start to finish.
Total dick,
there's nothing redeeming about his character whatsoever, and almost all of his dialogue is just quips or digs at people or sarcasm. He's like a really fucking base level Chandler Bing, and Cole is just an absolute stereotype. And again, he was so much better in later games. Yeah, and this one, he's just like an absolute maverick renegade who just runs into every single fight screaming, "Yeah, baby!" or "Woo!" and that's it.
Gears of War Judgment is like a spin-off game that's absolutely built around Cole and Baird. And like based on Gears of War 1, looking at it, it's like they absolutely do not warrant this whatsoever.
No.
So like I guess if we start with Act 1, essentially this one follows this is nothing other than a training mission that introduces the key mechanics, the key characters, and tries to start with a big bang that keeps us playing. One thing I thought was interesting about this game, or the first chapter, was that it's actually weirdly gloves off from the beginning. It sets up all the characters that you're going to meet and interact with, but then immediately kills two of them.
Yeah. Is one of them a Carmine?
One's Carmine and the other one that kills Kim, who's killed by Ram.
Yeah, which is a shame because he had apparently a code to every single door in the world.
Yeah, every single door in the world.
I did like the fact that in this tutorial mission, this is the one and only time where Dom is supposed to go get downed immediately.
Yeah,
because you're supposed to be learning how to revive him, but I didn't even bother. I just killed them all and he got up anyway.
Yeah, that's the other thing as well. So I timed I think it was maybe the second time I played through. You can see them cutting through the door. And I timed my grenade throw so that just as the door opened,
I kept trying and failing.
It blew them up.
Nice.
So like the enemies didn't even go in the room, and he still gets downed. So he must have just like slipped on something.
Oh, amazing! He gets down by nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That is fantastic. I started playing this on hardcore, and then definitely overestimated my rusty skills because. I think I mentioned this to you before. Like I noted that basically on hardcore, it seems as if you need at least 2 magazines to kill a locust, whereas on normal you can kill 2 locusts in 1 magazine. So after I realised it was too hard and turned it back to normal, I then died again because I was just trying to walk around like a complete badass. Like, this is well easy now.
I often take easy, like, you know, if you put someone down to easy to like go and do the collectibles or something, I always take it for granted and then just give up with engaging with the mechanics.
Yep.
And just stop hiding, just like walk through. And that's, I end up dying and I'm like, oh, I'm such an idiot.
I also I picked up on an absence of auto aim as well, which I actually quite like, although there were some disorienting moments where for some reason you come out of cover and he's aiming at the ceiling or whatever.
Yeah.
But I guess auto aim just feels like such a, especially on console, it's such an ever-present perennial mechanic that to play a game without it was actually quite refreshing.
Yeah, it was good fun.
Yeah.
Act 1 sets up the story, and we're basically going hunting for Alpha Squad, who has some resonator that will allow cog to map the underground tunnels so that they can then bomb it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Is what's happening here. So it sets up the story in an interesting way. It introduces some characters and it presents the major gameplay mechanics. One thing, I think the first thing that jumps out to me in Act 1 that they continually come back to, and it's actually such a small thing, but I ended up really enjoying it and appreciating it, is when the game allows you to choose which way you're going. I think this game is clearly made to be played co-op.
Yeah.
Because of stuff like this. And the thing that I like about the fork in the road stuff where you get to choose whether you go right or left is what it often does is it doesn't change the location of enemies and things like that. So the enemies will always be in the same place, and no matter which way you go, you'll be fighting the same enemies. It just encourages players to, if not communicate, but it enforces a level of tactics, I suppose. Maybe someone will be above the enemy and they'll able to get round and flank them while the enemy on the ground tries to hold them in place with some cover and fire and stuff. And I just think actually it's not something that's often talked about in Gears of War, but something they did really well.
Yeah, because when they do the split up in co-op, you're never split up together, are you? You're always, one of you goes one way and the other one goes the other way, and you're with an AI partner. And I actually did, for all we've talked about Dom being terrible and whatever, the voice lines that they gave to him were clearly put in there I don't know if they're probably in there for co-op as well, but for single player I found him actually quite helpful, in a sort of a subtle way where he'd say flank left, or he would say, he even tells you if you've missed a grenade on an emergence hole, or if you've got the emergence hole with the grenade, he'll say, oh you've closed it up and stuff. So there was a lot of cool stuff in there that allows you to take a tactical approach by yourself if you just listen to the cues.
There's a lot more emphasis on things like flanking than I remember there being in this game. In my head, it was always just a run and gun shooter, but actually, the game does encourage and reward you for anticipating e-holes coming out and dealing with them right away, and also trying to get round the side and round the back of enemies while your teammates do other things.
Again, if that was co-op, it would have worked better, because I found a lot of the time, when you've got like a Troika gun shooting at you, a mounted one, and you can't really hit them front on, I often felt like I didn't get any covering fire to try and flank it. The other guys would just be hiding. Whereas if you had an AI partner, you could probably draw the attention of the guy on the turret gun and go around and shoot him in the back. But most of the time, he was just, as soon as I popped out of cover, he just instantly looked back at me. It was quite funny. Like, he's got this amazing sense for Marcus Phoenix.
I suppose the big sort of set piece for this game is the bit we've already touched on, is the China shop section right at the end.
Obviously, having already gone through a mandatory Xbox 360 turret section.
Yes.
The first of many.
The first of many in this game. There's actually something to do with the turret sections. I think it's in Act 2, but we'll get back to that. What did you think overall, apart from the bugs? Did you enjoy the Wraith section? The Wraith. I keep calling it Wraith. The Berserker section?
I enjoyed the name of the achievement being a reference to Clerks film.
Well, what is it?
It's called My Love for You is Like a Truck, which is from a clip in Kevin Smith's movie Clerks, where there's some weird
niche
guy.
For you.
Yeah, my love for you was like a truck berserker. Some guy who's in a metal band, apparently, that's his song. The berserker bit is pretty iconic. I did still feel that sense of dread because it's a one-hit kill. And the only time that's really going to happen to you is if you're running away from it and you're not really looking. It was quite easy to bait it and dive out of the way. It did kill me a couple of times, I think, and obviously you had your glitch. Yeah. It's actually the funniest thing about the Berserker sections is that you feel more vulnerable and under threat when you're actually trying to shoot it with the hammer of dawn, than when you're trying to run away, because baiting him and moving out the way is easy. And moving out the way is easy, but when it's running at you and you've got to try and hold that button down and get the laser, and you're waiting those precious seconds for it to hit it, is when you're actually more likely to get smashed up. Yeah,
absolutely. Which I guess brings us to
the Hammer of Dawn is awesome, by the way.
The Hammer of Dawn, so that comes in the first one. You've got to try and kill all the cedars, don't you? And come back and forth.
It's what a cool idea for a weapon, just a fucking satellite that just absolutely wrecks them.
Yeah. And it's funny though, like they talk about it, they're like, why do we not just use this all the time? And their answer is just like,
Daylight.
Satellites.
Yeah. Did you ever use it on normal enemies? There's later in the game I did. I can't remember where it was, but I thought
there's a section that encourages you to use it against a boomer later on in the game.
Yeah,
and it's fun just making them explode.
Yeah, I think as well at this point we've also got the Boltok, so we're already there.
Yes, I did see that because it was that I was playing this just around the time that we were doing our last episode for the top fives, and the Boltok came and I was like, yes.
I kept that for the whole game, but that actually brings me to another point I wanted to talk to you about. Ask you a question of: is there anything more annoying than if you accidentally swap out your Lancer for a hammerburst rifle and then you can't find the Lancer to pick it up again?
Oh, I do that all the time. It's
so I actually noted how long it took me to get my Lancer back, and it wasn't until the end of Act 2. So I went through almost all of Act 1 and all of Act 2 before I got a fucking Lancer again.
Oh, absolute disaster.
I was devastated. Those hammerburst rifles are so shit. They're good for headshots, but yeah, I'm so annoyed at myself.
You actually touched upon the feeling of dread that the Berserker gives you, and I think actually that's another thing that's slightly underplayed in Gears of War games, that it does use quite often to quite good effect. I think is the right word. So like it does it in Act 1. It does it when you first meet the Wraiths properly, when you get a shotgun and they start. When you're waiting on Jack to open the door and they start coming from either side, and you've just got to hold off a wave of them.
The wretches.
Yes, I don't know why I'm calling it. I'm obsessed with Wraith. What is it? What's a Wraith from?
Well, there's a Wraith
Other than
in
being
Apex.
a vehicle, and there's a Wraith. That could be that. There's also the vehicle in Halo. I don't know where I've been playing. There's been Wraiths around.
There might be a Wraith. I don't know. Is there? Is one of
no? I think what it is there's a chapter in Act 1 called Wrath, and I'm seeing it written over and over again in my notes, and I think that's what's putting the word Wraith in my head.
Yeah, see, when we talked about the weapons last week, I remember you saying that when the wretches come at you, you love revving the chainsaw and just running at them. Yeah. But for me, it's always been hip fire shotgun, one tap.
Yeah.
Never aim, just run around and just press the shotgun button. And that's how I deal with every wretch encounter.
It's so fun dealing with. I find wretch encounters so fun because you think you've got it under control, and you think you're slowly knocking them out one by one every time they come. But then if you miss one, things quite quickly go out of control, and then you stop from standing in one place, maybe shooting them or chopping them up, to actually having to dive about and hip fire and just avoid them basically because In easier difficulties, they are fun. They're a fun thing to deal with. I always like to try and catch them on the volley, as I say, as they're jumping in the air, try and just hit them with a shotgun. But on a higher difficulty, I've played this on Insane in co-op, and they are always an absolute pain in the arse. They will completely they'll just swarm you. You'll get overrun. You will take a lot of damage from even a single swipe, and they are a nightmare on higher difficulties, especially the exploding ones, which we'll get to later. Yeah, absolutely. So obviously at the end of Act 1, you get the resonator and you have to find a way to go and deploy it. So Act 2 is spent by looking for a vehicle and then starting to transport the resonator to the facility that you eventually take it to.
Yes.
This has actually got one of my... I remember at the time, so the mechanic of the exploding... gas canisters. I remember absolutely loving that back in the day. It feels a little bit simplistic now, but I think in general it's pretty well done. For those that maybe don't know what we're talking about, is as you're walking through the level, nightfall comes, and when night comes, there's this enemy called the Krill. So you have to make sure you're staying in the light because the Krill can't go in the light, and if you go in the dark, they'll basically just tear you apart like airborne. What are those fish that eat you? Piranhas, like airborne piranhas. They'll just tear you to bits. Yes. So what you do is you walk through the streets and you have to shoot gas canisters to create some light to allow you to progress to the next area. I think generally this act is done pretty well and uses light in some fun ways, even down to the bit where you've got to shine a spotlight on Dom and move him across a street so that you can get to the other side and flip a switch to bring on the street lights. What do you think of Act 2? Did you enjoy Act 2?
Apart from the fact that I didn't have a Lancer.
And it's a stupid burst as well.
Yeah, the Krill, I mean, they suck. I like they definitely did a lot of work for the Ultimate Edition on the lighting. They started to use proper shadow casting light sources and things like that. So this is a lot more effective in this version than in the original.
Yeah.
I actually saw a thing on the Digital Foundry video I watched, which is why I sound so knowledgeable and clever, where they said that when you push that burning car down a ramp and you have to chase it to stay in the light, the way that it casts the shadow and stuff and it kind of lights up was actually sort of shown in the original, I think it was E3 2005 video, but they took it out of the 360 version of this because it was just going to cause too many constraints on the hardware. So this is a thing that they obviously decided to put straight back into this version to make it look how it should have done in the original game from something that was cut. I can't remember how bad it was in the original or how sort of
no, I didn't get that far.
But this is a cool section. Obviously, the junker section itself is, well, again, that Digital Foundry video I watched seems to suggest that they made you take less damage on the junker from the krill, because that was one of the most hate-filled things ever in the original game. On Insane, it took us hours. It's disgusting that you have to stop the car to be able to shoot them.
Oh my god!
But I might be jumping ahead. I don't know what you've got notes.
No, carry on. The bit in this section I actually want to talk about is probably what was back in the day my favourite section of the game, where so essentially for those, again, well, hopefully you have played this, but you go and you go and you get a junker, which is a vehicle which is going to take you to the facility that you need to deploy the resonator. And it turns out that the stranded camp, which you start off in, is being assaulted full force by the locust, and you need to get back and then hold them off. I see when you get back and actually start engaging with the onslaught, I really, really enjoy that section.
Yes, when you're up on the kind of walkways above them all. Yeah, that's great. I forgot about that bit. I always remember just the gas station bit in this.
Oh yeah, the gas station bit's good. Well, the gas station bit, the bit with the Troika gun in earlier in the act, where you've got to push a Troika gun and then the enemy comes from a different direction, and then again at the end of this, with the fight against the locust. I think what this game does really well is making the enemies come from all around. They're never, your attention is never safe just facing in front of you and not worrying about what's happening on around you. And I think this is another example of when the boomers start coming out the ground in the camp while you're getting attacked from the front. I just think this game does a good job of creating the feeling of that you're just scrambling to stay alive, which is what I love in shooters. I want to feel like I'm just holding on by the skin of my teeth and no more. Yeah. And that section is good at that, I think, and it also lets me loose with the sniper rifle, which is I've got no love in this game.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you know, we've talked about the story a couple of times already, and although it doesn't really do a lot, it definitely kind of maintains that feeling throughout most of the entire series of these games, where you're just constantly under the cosh as the human race in this battle, and the locusts just seemingly never ending, indestructible bastards who won't go away. And the enemy design is something that also needs to be massively respected, because I love the boomers so much. The
boomers are great,
and they're just big stupid heads that you can just continually blast into. Fantastic, love those.
What was I going to say? I was going to say something and I've totally forgotten. Oh, I wonder if there's. I'm assuming it's deliberate, but I was again playing this section, the section with the junker specifically, thinking that this game is just a bit of is like darkly comedic, and they're just kind of idiots as well.
Yeah.
So like whatever you do, everything always goes wrong. Nothing ever goes smoothly. But then at certain points they kind of bring it on themselves. So you fight the junker, you fight the locust when you're refueling the junker, so you can drive it back to the camp, and you do it, and you're like, oh, we need to go. And then Dom just like, rather than just pull the fuel pipe out and put it on the ground, he kicks it so it breaks and smashes fuel everywhere. And then as they're driving away, they knock over an electric tower that then falls onto the fuel tankers and makes the whole thing explode. It's just like, you guys are such a bunch of idiots.
There's a bit when you're in, I think it's when you're in Marcus's dad's house and you go down into the cellar, where Marcus keeps saying, shh, quiet. There are locusts here, and then immediately kicks the fucking door open as hard as he can. What are we doing? So yeah, you're right. They are just big, brainless, muscular guys. But
yeah, you get to the point where you're like, I understand why people see you coming and think, oh no, like Even with the krill section, you're smashing through the level, just setting everything on fire so that you can just walk on.
Yeah.
Everybody around you dies immediately.
Yeah.
They're just a bunch of idiots.
Yeah.
But they're lovable idiots.
They are lovable idiots.
I think
Except
the
Baird,
opening...
who's an asshole.
Except Baird. I think the opening to Act 3 in this game is maybe the most effective part this game has. I remember, I think there's bits and pieces in this game where it never obviously never leaves this sort of shooter nature behind, but there are certain bits where this game has quite a lot of almost a horror aspect to it.
Yeah.
And I think when you arrive outside the station, your junker breaks down and you're walking through the rain, and this is the first time you start seeing lambent locusts that explode when they die. Arriving at this facility, I think there's something quite foreboding about it. I don't know how you felt about it, Alex.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And again, I'm going to refer back to this Digital Foundry comparison video that I watched, where the actual storm and rain effects are actually really reduced in this version compared to the original, because the original version had quite a lot of fogging that was necessary for to handle the performance of the game properly.
Right. Yeah.
So in this one, it's a lot clearer. And I think that previously the rain was like textures coming down, whereas now it's like a real-time engine that's producing rain. So it actually looks less horrific.
It does, actually. And do you not think the wretches, did I use the right word? Yeah, the wretches look a bit odd when they're climbing up the building when you first see them.
Still wasted a sniper shot on them. I've not learned that lesson yet, because it's clearly just a cutscene, but I'm still going to try and snipe that one on the silo right the first time you see him.
Of course you are.
I mean, I've seen the comparison of the two, and they were really just grey, maybe a bit black before, but now they glow everywhere. So again, you can see them coming a lot more. But they are a massive threat in this point. And again, I keep going back to playing it on Insane previously, but it's almost impossible, these parts where you're getting swarmed by lambent wretches that just blow up every time you've shot them, because normally it's going to be right in front of your face, which is. It seems quite a basic thing to throw at the player. Like, okay, now you've got these horde enemies that swarm you, but this time you need to move after you've killed them. But it actually really works, and it adds to that horror aspect massively, especially in that bit where you can fall down into the the wood.
That's right.
To the wretch pit.
This is another thing. I think for me, that's where the game maybe shows its age a bit. I remember finding that bit really fun the first time I played this game.
Yeah.
Because I remember it years and years ago, but this time I was just getting through it thinking, you're a pain in the neck, this section.
Actually, that brings me to another question. What do you think about the walking with the exposition? Do you think that's aged poorly as well? Because I know they cut it out. They at least allowed you to sort of jog, didn't they, in later games? But in this one, we're going right back to snail's pace walking while Anya needs to be talked to on the headset.
Yeah, my assumption is they're hidden loading screens.
Yeah, probably.
But I totally agree with you, because it's a game that's quite fast-paced and all action. And then to remove... One of my pet hates in games is when you remove control for a player. So whether it's a shooter and there's a status effect that makes you go slow or lose control of your character.
Yeah.
I just don't like it, because if you're going to make a game that's all about sort of running, gunning, shooting things, that like a really fast-paced action game, I would rather just have a cutscene that I can watch rather than slowly walk through a corridor.
I think that's got to be why water levels get a lot of universal hate as well, because it does exactly that.
I think the video game industry would be infinitely better if you just took water out of games. Do not like them.
Yeah.
It's rare. I think, actually, side note, I think off the top of my head, the only time I can remember liking water sections in a video game is maybe the sort of what do you call it, when Rayman came out in the Xbox 360.
Yeah, they were great.
Yeah.
Rayman
Everything else,
Legends, yeah,
bad. Even the Mario ones I don't like particularly.
There's something weird about that, though, isn't there? The way that they programmed in the original Mario Bros. There's a way that they programmed him underwater that's just like him jumping or something. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah.
But this section is cool. It's one of the most memorable ones, isn't it? I think especially
so.
with the look of it, because there's a lot of grey. I mean, they did a lot of good work in this Ultimate Edition to put loads more lighting in it. So there's a lots of kind of amber and orangey hues going around, rather than it's basically monochrome, the original version. So this was the real kind of visual sort of spectacle in the game, and it definitely still holds up in that regard.
Absolutely. You also end up, this is where you end up underground trying to plant the resonator in this act, and traditionally Gears of War games and Unreal Engine games got attacked for being just grey and brown all the time, but I actually think it's used to quite good effect in this area with the emulsion and the sort of stark yellowness of it.
I love that.
Means that when there's sections of the game that are, well, they're really, really pretty, but they're super atmospheric, and I think it's done really well in this section. Just everything. I think this is the best section of the game.
Yeah, and the bit that you're talking about when you end up underground is segued into by one of my favourite animations of all time. That bit where Marcus and Dom slip down that slope.
Oh, the comedy of errors continue. Yeah,
it's fucking like Chuckle Brothers shit. It's so funny. Like, what? They've slipped on a comedy banana skin. Amazing. This one is the one that ends with the corpser thing, isn't it? The corpser fight.
Yes, which is a boss fight that I managed to complete without fully working out what I was meant to be doing.
I'm pretty sure it's invincible for the first 30 seconds as well, because you cannot shoot its belly if you at the beginning, even when it exposes it. It just won't have it until they decide. Oh no, sorry. Because you're supposed to shoot it in the face, I think. You're supposed to do it in the belly and then in the face.
You shoot it in the belly, then it opens its legs up and you shoot it in the face, I think. I think.
Yeah. If you shoot its skin anywhere in the first 30 seconds or so of this fight, it does not happen until you get that voice line that says, shoot its belly or its exposed belly or whatever. Which was, yeah. I guess it's just an old sort of trope that they don't really use in games anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing. Is as much as this game I think has held up incredibly well, there are one or two moments that just feel it's obvious it's from its time.
Yeah. I somehow killed the corpser while facing the wrong way, so I think Dom might have done something.
Oh, really?
He might have done. Because I remember I turned around to run away, and then it just sort of ended. It must have fallen back into the pit. Maybe I'd shot it enough and was being a badass and not looking at explosions, but...
Talking badass, I was a big fan of that cutscene after where it busts out and Marcus just sort of watches it.
Right, that's amazing. So he doesn't give it any shit, he just stares at it. It's so good.
Such a big dumb action movie, but I love it.
Yeah.
This act sort of concludes with you deploying the resonator. Actually, before we move on, this is where you encounter the Theron guards for the first time.
Yeah.
Which I think is probably worth noting. Towards the end of the chapter, you get to this big underground facility that seems to be sort of an emulsion plant, refinery, or something like that. And you encounter a new type of enemy, which they have a new weapon, which you're a big fan of.
Yes.
The torque bow. And this is just a stronger and what I think is more aggressive version of the normal Locust.
What are they called? Theron guards.
Theron guards, yeah.
Yes,
they're like the Queen's personal guards.
Yes, because I thought it was quite interesting and a nice little touch that I guess because he's been away, maybe because he was locked up, that Marcus doesn't really know what they are, and he says, "Oh, they've upgraded," and then somebody else says, "No, they're Theron guards." I think it might be Baird or Dom, one of the two. So I thought that was quite a cool little touch that Marcus isn't entirely sure what he's up against. Yeah,
because I actually was playing through this and I kind of realised this game follows a roughly 2.5 day period.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a long period of time.
No, where Marcus is like literally been out of prison for 2 days. Like what a lot to get through.
What a wild ride.
I think he spends quite a while in prison as well.
Yeah. I think so. I think they said he's been... Well, because at the beginning when Dom breaks him out, he says, where's let's go see someone, doesn't he? And he's like, everyone's gone. They've all been pardoned.
Yeah. Because things are going badly.
Oh, yeah. They also have lancers as well. I think they're the first enemies, the Theron guards, are to have working lancers that...
Oh, really?
They can chew you up with a chainsaw, which took me by surprise when I'm running in there thinking I can just, invincible my way through all of this.
One thing I forgot that they added to Gears of War 2 was, remember when they have the same weapon as well, and you sort of have a weird sword off.
Yeah, that was wicked.
And you have to button mash.
Yeah.
I wish they'd added that to the first game.
The one thing I will also add to this bit is, when you first hear these guards, I'm calling utter bullshit on Baird because you hear a
oh yeah,
and he's like, oh, it's just the wind, and then he goes, when's the last time the wind whispered hostiles at you?
Yeah.
Fuck off, does it say hostiles? No way.
Absolutely not. Yeah, I remember
making
thinking
that shit
too.
It's funny how you remember certain things. Like there's the bit where you got another splitting up bit in this before you get to the refinery.
Yeah, where the sort of waves it sort of interlaces between one another, the section.
Yeah. So that bit again is another bit that's on Insane was so difficult because they're coming from all angles. That there's the bit where Dom says, "I hope I got the right path," and then Marcus just goes, "Hey, I hope we both do." That I remembered vividly quoting that every time because we played this bit so many times over that I was just waiting for, "Hey, I hope we both do." I think I have PTSD of this.
You are absolutely glutton for punishment playing this game. Was it on Insane?
I've done all of them on Insane.
Oh, that's absolutely madness.
Only in co-op. I'd never do it by myself.
It is actually insane, that game on Insane difficulty.
It's an utter ordeal. There's not a lot of fun about it whatsoever.
But you battled through.
I did. I've got the achievements to prove it.
Absolute animal. So the end of Act 3 sees you deploy the resonator, only to find out that I didn't quite get this. It didn't do its job properly, or were the tunnels bigger than they thought they were?
I didn't get it either because I thought it was a bomb, but then it isn't because there's a bomb later on. So
yeah, what
didn't work, I'm still unsure of.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Time. So it's like, so as far as I understood, you wanted to map the tunnels so that you could set off a bomb, but I don't know why you need just set the bomb off. But maybe the resonator told you the best place to set the bomb off, but it doesn't work, or they find out the tunnels are bigger than they thought. But coincidentally, Baird found a box that has much more map data than they actually got from the resonator, rendering everything you've done to this point completely pointless.
It's a very bad thing to do.
Yeah, and he's just had it and not bothered telling anyone.
He just chucks it really casually to Mark's like, check this out though, mate.
Yeah, and then just by looking at it over her comms, Anya manages to figure out that it originates from a university that Marcus's dad seemed to work at. So you're off to your childhood home to look at some pictures on the wall and see if you can download more map data to help you with the bomb, I think is what we're doing.
Yeah, I think so. It's all just a reason to go somewhere and kill something.
Yeah.
Which is fine for me.
Absolutely fine for me. I actually quite enjoy the Marcus's home section. It's quite fun, busting into the house, going through all the corridors, seeing the funny pictures of Marcus as a child, and then holding off the house, sort of holding off the locust from your house window, which is quite good fun.
Yeah, it's also fun to note that even the house is brown and grey.
Brown and grey, yeah.
Before that, though, there's a berserker section which I really am not a fan of.
Oh, this is when you're moving through the sort of the university campus and you end up in the conservatory, right?
Yes, and I forgot what you had to do because I was shooting the ceiling at first and it wasn't working. You got to make it knock down all the pillars, haven't you?
Yeah.
Is that right? But then, is there a way in that bit where you actually break the entire ceiling? Because all I ever seemed to get was just holes in the ceiling, which meant that the Hammer of Dawn was buggy as fuck.
Yeah, I ended up with just holes, pretty much.
Yeah, that was so annoying, that bit. I don't think it killed me, but it just took ages.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And that was, I think I died as well. I held on to try and get the Hammer of Dawn off too late, and she managed to get to me.
Yeah, that's where it goes from being frightening to just frustrating. The Berserker fight. It's not got the impact of the first one whatsoever. Yeah,
it's also the point where I clicked that everything in this game, because it's just like Marcus can't open a door, he's got to smash open every door with his foot.
Damn right.
Also, apparently anyone that's working any sort of electronics can only push a massive button or turn a big red wheel.
Yeah,
that's all there is. And
by push a button you mean punch it.
Yeah.
Smash the button.
But yeah, I thought this was a really fun section of the game. Apart from the Berserker section, obviously, moving through the university campus was done quite well. There's a section with Troika guns that are sort of above each other. One's above a bridge and one's below a bridge. Just before you get to your house.
That confused the hell out of me. That's the bit where Don disappeared.
Yeah,
because I ran down the bottom bit and then realised I couldn't go any. I kept dying there because I was like, "How the hell do I get over this, bro?" Because the thing breaks away, doesn't it?
Yes.
Like you've got a bridge that you're trying to cross, it breaks away, and you just get mashed up by the two troikas on different levels. So I remember I threw a grenade at the upper one and managed to kill him. I was like, well, he can't shoot the floor now. And then walked and it still crumbled anyway. I just thought, where do I go? And then I realised you've got to loop back and go on the upper version. But that's where Dom just completely checked out. Fuck knows where. Maybe he fell down when it crumbled away. Who knows?
I think he got downed in my one. He did what you did. He ran downstairs and just stood in front of the Troika gun.
Yeah. Oh shit!
So I
I'm
just
not
left
Dom,
him to it. I found myself on normal mode. I think it's maybe a bit different on other harder difficulties, but on normal mode, every time he got down, I just ignored him.
Oh, 100%. Which really screws you in that the Brumac fight coming up.
Oh, we will have a chat about that.
Yeah. But yeah, I love that. I don't think with the monochrome color palette that the original game had, it's easy to forget the actual decent level of variety that you get from act to act, because you're starting off in like government buildings, then you're in the slums at night time, then you're in the emulsion mines and all that kind of stuff with the silos, then you're in your own house. So it does flip you about the world in a quite cool way. I mean, the second game had loads of amazing shit going on with the snow levels and whatever, but it's got a lot more variety than I remembered.
Yeah, it really does. I think they do it really well, and each act feels distinct. Yes. And like you're saying, there is a variety to it. Yes, the color palette might be broadly similar, but the way they create and use environments I think is really, really well done in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice to just play something really tight. From it doesn't overstay its welcome. Everything is just exhilarating, apart from when you're walking and talking. But this, it's this kind of game that seemingly only Sony are trying to do, and even when they do it nowadays, it's still 30 or 35 hours, whereas this is a nice 10, 12 hour action romp.
Where everything, you're right, where everything in it is fun, everything in it is like, and because it's short, the stuff they do with like weapon placements or the little set piece fancy bits like driving your junker or fighting a berserker or even the train level at the end.
Yeah.
Everything feels new and nothing really gets stale, I don't think.
Yeah, even though the enemies are always this kind of pretty much the same. Yeah. But you're right. They do enough to kind of mix one or two things up, give you a new weapon or a new enemy to fight, like the reavers on the train bit.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the pacing of this game, and I really enjoyed that. Just the length of it in general was refreshing, even though it's not refreshing, it's old. But
yeah,
maybe the Gears franchise is part of the reason that this type of game died a death, because everyone did this after Gears.
Yeah, and it's a shame because looking at this game and then looking at Gears 5, I actually don't think the series has moved on particularly. So. No. Like the game still, like it's partly both good and bad, I guess. That Gears 1 still feels modern. I mean, like, yeah, as an example, like whatever you think of, I think the Beatles are great, but whatever you think of the Beatles, like one thing that I think is amazing about a lot of their songs is like Hey Jude or Yesterday feels equally at home if it was written today or if it was written in the 60s or the 70s or the 80s. It's sort of timeless and it still feels modern. I'd say not to compare Gears of War to the Beatles, but
fine by me.
The gameplay mechanics still feel relevant and they still feel new and they still feel, they don't, like, for instance, I think in many cases when you're playing Halo Combat Evolved, that because of the lack of aim down sights and the nature of the floaty jumps and things like that game, although is still fun, it shows its age. I think this game, for the most part, everything it does still feels relevant.
That's a good point, actually, because one of the things that people always talk about with these Gears games is like the fact that they've got like enormous armor on. And I don't know if this was by design to make the game easier to develop or keep things kind of streamlined in terms of what your characters are going to be able to do. But something that could appear on the surface to be restrictive in terms of how they're a bit clunky, their sprint isn't really that fast, you can't jump. But it actually still holds up quite nicely today because you can buy into that in terms of immersion of these guys have got this massive armor on and you're thudding into these chest high walls. You're leaping over them in not the most acrobatic ways. Everything feels kind of almost trudgy and slow, but in a I don't want to say visceral because we've already talked about that word, but it does feel like that.
Yeah, totally.
Everything's kind of chunky, but that's clearly by design, I think.
What do you think of the imagery that was specifically this act starts to bring forward in it? So, like, because we know about the story, the cog actually aren't, for the most part, the good guys. They used like nuclear weapons on their own people.
Yeah.
But like, they have very sort of stark and effective imagery, and it's very reminiscent of governments of today that are very controlling and very, very centered around their militaristic nature, which I guess if you've just come out of 100 years war, that's to an extent that's to be expected. But even when you're imagine like if your house looked like Marcus Phoenix's house, you had big eagles on the walls, massive like military insignia everywhere. Like, I think this is, I guess the game does build on it, but I thought it was interesting. This is where I really start to notice how maybe the cog aren't the good guys. And then you marry that with the Stranded. You're obviously not welcome when you meet the Stranded.
They call you a fascist pig or something, don't they, at some point?
Yeah. Which I thought was quite interesting.
There's a lot of propaganda posters around walls and stuff, isn't there? I can't remember what sections they're in, but there's a lot of that kind of feel of when you played a game like Homefront or whatever, where you had all those Chinese communist posters littered everywhere. It kind of felt a little bit similar to that it's a bit of an oppressive regime.
It's one thing I think, this is the thing that I find both a shame and a slightly frustrating though, is because I think the world building in Gears is again, I'm not trying to claim it's some sort of intricate, amazing storyline, but this game knows what it is. It knows it's big and dumb, but the world building it creates within the game is, I think, it's fantastic, but it just doesn't explain itself at all.
I completely agree. That's what I was saying at the beginning, that it's functional in that the concept of this game is great. Like a load of these despicable warriors bursting out of the floor and annihilating humanity, and then people have to nuke their own kind to survive, and everything's a desperate struggle. That setup is all you need, but to develop it from then on, like I say, it only really starts to do it at the end of this game.
Yeah, and then at the end of Gears 2, you sink a whole city, don't you?
Yeah.
To try and flood, like the bomb didn't work, so let's try and flood them this time in the same way that we used a bomb the last time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember that. You like flying out of the hole at the end, grabbing on helicopters. Yeah.
So that is, well, I'm trying to think. I'm now trying to look at my.
I think once you get out of the house, that's the end of the act, isn't it? You're onto.
So yeah, we move on to Act 5, which is essentially we have downloaded the plans and we know what the tunnels look like. We have a bomb. We need to go and set the bomb off. So it's now Marcus's job to sort of fight his way towards the train that the bomb is on, and then find a way to deploy the bomb. Obviously, because everything goes wrong, we get blocked off on our way to the train, and then the humans eventually lose control of the train. So we have to sort of wrestle it back in a way from the locust, and then set the bomb off. So this one starts. This is where I think a lot of this act is where the extra content.
I was going to ask you if you know what is new and what isn't, because I remember obviously you're playing a lot of this as Marcus and Dom separated from Baird and Cole because they didn't get on the train or something that you get on in the beginning. Yeah. And then they meet up with you later on when you're on the light mass bomb train. But I didn't remember that at all. That we got split up. And I remember when they started saying, "Oh, here we were back now," or whatever. I thought, "Oh, have they added that in, or was that always there?" But if it was always there, then where does all the extra bits come in? Because it seemed like they obviously fleshed out the separated part, but
yeah. So there's a section in this game. Obviously, the Brumac fight is added, but I say essentially, like as a rule of thumb, anything containing the Brumac is added. Yes. So the bridge is blocked. You have to move to an electric plant to try and restore power to the bridge to let you go back to the vehicle and then continue on to the train. While you're doing this, there's sort of, in a weirdly slapstick way, there's a Brumac sort of circling everything you do. Yeah. And Baird and Cole are just sort of running around getting it to chase them every so often.
Oh, the voice lines and sound clips from that were just constant for me. So when I was inside the building, all I could just hear was a shotgun going off all the time, and Cole just go, "Whoa, come and get me, baby!" It's really off-putting. I was like, "Where are you?"
Yeah. As you're fighting your way through this area, which is where the Brumac fight kind of comes to, is you're trying to, again, like I said, you're trying to restore power, but something to do with transformers, and a bit like in Star Trek when their answer to every problem is put more power into the deflector shield. In this one, he's like, oh, we need a big transformer. We need to move power from here to here. And
yeah.
So you have to sort of tempt the Brumac into the power lines.
Yeah.
Because it turns out that the Locust need power, but they don't have their own power plants, so they've taken control of one of your power plants and are basically running an extension lead under the ground.
Right.
So you need to sort of unplug the extension lead.
Okay.
So yeah, that brings us to this Brumac fight. I hated it. I really didn't enjoy this fight. What did you think about it, Alex?
It's a missed opportunity, definitely. Because you on the ground fighting this giant Brumac should be really fun, but well, maybe in co-op it is, because you could employ again some strategy. The big strategy I found that didn't work in this was using cover of any kind. I just had to basically keep running around, sprint as far away as possible, and try and shoot it, because Dom was always on his knees from the beginning, so he was totally fucking useless.
Yeah, that you're right. I think in co-op it probably is more fun, because there is the Brumac responds to gunfire quite easily, so you can kite it around, and you can take different sides, and you can try and basically just keep it at arm's length while you beat up its guns. Whereas in single player, you had to shoot its guns, but every time you did that, the thing just absolutely charged at you. So it was basically just a scramble to not get one hit killed, and then try and find another place to get cover before the guns on the Brumac tore you to pieces while Dom was lying on the ground dead.
I mean, I don't mind a variety in gameplay for sure, but there's always a rankle that I'll have with a boss fight that takes away the skill set that you should have gained by the time you get there, and forces you to just completely go on the fly and do something new.
You're developing a skill through a gameplay loop, and then they totally abandon it and make you do the exact opposite. I totally agree with that. I found, did you figure, like, because I think I struggled with this more than you did.
Yeah.
But I found that, so basically how the section goes is you've got to shoot the guns on the arm.
Yeah.
And then you've got to start shooting the feet to make the Brumac fall over to allow you to shoot the driver.
That was that was the hardest part I found.
So I found the first section harder, and eventually the way I figured out how to do it was try your best to get Dom up and run away, because as soon as you get Dom up, the Brumac would tend to focus on Dom, which would usually allow you to get into cover and maybe shoot a gun.
Yeah.
But then after that, give up on Dom. Once you've got the guns destroyed, give up on Dom and just try and get the driver dead.
Yeah.
Was the way I found.
The window to shoot the driver was so small though.
Yeah, it was.
Because I think I was always trying to switch to a sniper to get him, but it wouldn't switch quick enough. No, I didn't have a sniper. I had a boom shot. That's why I found this easier. Because that was easier to take the guns out with the boom shot if I could land shots.
I bet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. When I was just sort of blind firing at them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. And then of course you complete that. You tempt the Brumac into the power lines, which then somehow restores power to the bridge to let you then carry on and get to the train station.
Didn't need a lot of tempting either. He fucking bites it at the end.
Yeah, just run there from the start. It would be fine.
But yeah,
I talking about how much I liked the bit in the stranded camp. I really, really like it when you get to the train yard, because it's instant. Usually in this game, there's a build up, i.e., you start off in a quiet area and then you move in and you start getting shot. This is instant. As soon as you get to the train yard, there's just enemies in all directions. It's really, really good. I thought that was a really well done section in the game.
Yeah.
And you've got to keep moving to stay on your feet as well, because it's like snipers start popping up behind you, so you've basically got to just keep on the move.
Is this when they're in like high-rise buildings as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a sniper at this point, so I actually did feel quite genuinely helpless. I just thought I'm never going to get those snipers because I've got no range to deal with them. Because for some reason I had a boom shot instead of a sniper rifle by this point.
I actually thinking there's probably a fun video we could make on our YouTube channel about train levels. Yeah, because it's a weirdly common
in my head.
Thing
this
in
is
games.
This versus GoldenEye. I think
this and GoldenEye. Yeah, that's probably the best two. And then there's a well, actually, let's not go into this. We'll carry on. Maybe come back to this at a later date.
Yeah, there's enough of a teaser, I think, for people who want more train level talk.
Yeah. Essentially, you fight. It becomes apparent that the cog have lost control of the train, and you need to get on the train as it's flying through the train station. So you fight your way to the train station. Cole and Baird get left behind because they're not quick enough. You say hurry up, and then they go, yeah, I'm coming, and then don't bother.
Yeah.
So you and Dom end up on the train, and you basically got to fight your way to the front to the end battle. What do you think about the train level? I quite enjoy it, actually.
Me too. Me too. Again, on normal difficulty, it's a lot more fun than it is on later ones, because on later difficulties, the Reavers will wreck you.
It's sort of a weird whistle-stop tour of everything you've done up to this point in Gears, isn't it? Like you encountered a berserker, you've got to push some buttons.
Oh, that's fun. I quite like that. That reminded me of Resident Evil Code Veronica, where you got to kick the tyrant off a plane.
Did you watch him die? Her die, the berserker, after you cut?
I think so. Well, I wanted to make sure it was definitely going to die and
bad.
not come back, but it just kind of disappears, doesn't it?
It just sort of it has a death animation so like when you push the button and detach the cars, like for some reason that means the cars have to flip and explode. Of course it does. But when it does that, it goes as soon as the flipping and exploding animations start. It just goes into the death animation and then just sort of shrinks. They've obviously just like shrunk it to try and make it look like it's going off into the distance.
Yeah.
And it is so bad.
I cannot believe how easy I found that bit. I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just kind of running away for a bit, and then he's like, disconnect the cars. Like, there's a button right there.
Push the button.
Yeah. That's a cool way of making that fight different, because you've got no hammer, which is great, because Marcus immediately goes, right, let's fucking Hammer of Dawn him, despite the fact that I don't have one and it's not available right now anyway.
Yeah, she's like, what was it, Anya, Hammer of Dawn is getting used now, and she's like, nah, it's no.
Yeah, well, where is it then? Look in your hands, where's your Hammer of Dawn, smart guy?
So yeah, you like I was saying, this is like a whistle stop tour. It goes through, like, you have like the waves of wretches coming. You encounter most of the different enemies. Other than the Hammer of Dawn, most of the guns appear and encourage you to use them. There's a Troika gun section. It introduces another new enemy, which is, what are they called? The flying things.
The Reavers.
The Reavers, yeah, and then
which, if you shoot the driver off, they explode.
Yeah,
died of a broken heart.
That's what happens. You feel if you had a sniper rifle and you went onto a Joe Casual, this got morbid quick. You just started shooting drivers.
Yeah.
Just the cars would explode. That's how it works.
There's something about being on a train that's moving fast that somehow makes me want to go really, really fast through the level.
So you were tearing through it, were you?
Yeah, I was trying to. I think they do did they do a timer in this one, or was that somewhere later?
I think there is a timer, yeah. There's a timer for the Brumac. Not the Brumac, the Berserker.
I just distinctly remember there was a bit where you had to run through something and just leg it past stuff, but that might be somewhere else. Maybe that's when you get out of the house.
I was about to say, talking timers, I found the timer when you get out the back of Marcus's house really, really tight.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of, yeah.
It was super tight. It did not give you a lot of time.
Nope. No, you can't really fight. That must have been
tough and insane.
Oh, yeah, probably. Just leg it, I think, at that point, or chuck a grenade and hope.
Hope for the best.
But yeah, the train level, there is no real time limit restraining you, but I just felt like I had to go really quick. I just got caught up in the
must be something about the
scenery speeding past.
Yeah, you're right. It must be something about the train train movement that's doing that for you.
It's a cool section, a cool set piece. I like it.
You were talking about. I guess this probably brings us to the.
It does
to the Ram, who is foreshadowed at the very start of the game as he murders Kim.
I swear that was a different thing as well in that cutscene. I'm pretty sure originally the death was different, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. So I watched this one. The original, it's a bit more silly in the original game. Is in that Ram picks up Kim and starts punching him in the face.
Yeah,
and then just sort of shoots him and throws him away. Whereas this is much more dramatic in the Ultimate Edition. He like walks up to Kim while there's loads of explosions going around and like stabs him through the stomach with a big sword and lifts him off the ground.
Yeah, I thought he shanked him in the first one, but yeah, he obviously doesn't.
Yeah, so it's fun. I didn't. And sort of the inverse to when we were talking about the Brumac fight. I had absolutely no bother with this fight whatsoever.
That's that is nuts. This is the most. This is the most like. This has been an mortal enemy of me for however many years since this first game came out. It's just so heinous. I don't know how you did it. I think you said you just basically spam fired him in the face. Yeah, that's unbelievable. The amount of times those krill got me. Yeah.
Whether the krill were there or not, I just shot.
I can't believe the krill didn't ever get you. because
No,
they
not
got me
once.
every time. And like I said to you in the text, we were talking about this, where didn't matter what I seemed to do. If I sat there behind cover, they'd get me. If I tried to run away, they'd get me. If I tried to roll around, they'd get me. And all the time, Dom is just completely useless. Runs straight up to Ram, gets twatted in the face, kneels in front of him for the entire fight. And at that point, you're thinking, do I get him up? Because I'm going to run out of grenades to get rid of these krill. But apparently, I don't need to even employ that strategy either. It's weird as well, because doesn't Coltrate, he like fires something at him, he fires the light cannon to get rid of the krill, but they don't seem to ever do that again.
No.
So you just kind of having to. I always thought you just had to throw a grenade and then shoot him when the krill got away. But I must have died 25, 30 times on this, just over and over again, trying to. As soon as the krill came, I was done for, and I try and run to the other side of the thing. I tried to get on the Troika gun at one point, which was a bad idea. And eventually, I must have just powered through and somehow managed to get enough. I think once I switched to the Lancer, it worked better than trying to snipe him every time.
Yeah,
because I would miss the shots, and then I'd lose that window of opportunity to actually do any damage on him. So that's why it was taking me so long every time. And then just to get spam killed by the krill was just an absolute ball ache.
Yep. And I guess once you've done that in true Gears of War form, you manage to avoid death by the skin of your teeth by jumping onto a helicopter as the train flies off a bridge into emulsion, I think, or is it water? I don't know.
Yeah, I can't imagine how difficult it must be to jump from a moving train onto a moving helicopter.
Well,
I always just feel like you would like disappear.
Yeah,
you'd have no momentum, and you'd just like land on the floor, and then everything else would just go screaming into the distance. But it's a cool little set piece.
Yeah, I quite like the set piece at the end. It's again like big dumb action movie sort of set piece. And then you see a big explosion, and then you get a weird chat from Hoffman, and then a chat from the Queen at the end to set up the next game.
Bold move.
Generally quite well done.
I always give massive kudos to a first game in a series that you don't know is actually a series that foreshadow a sequel at the end.
Billy Big Bollocks.
Yeah, you think you've just been developing this. You've marketed it, and it's had Microsoft's backing, but at no point was there any confirmation that anyone was going to like this or buy this or want a sequel for this, and you've just stuck it in there anyway. Yep.
But then there's also the sad ones that do that, but are complete commercial flops, and you never get the next one.
Like Shenmue took
decades
before they could fill that, and they haven't even bothered to do that yet either.
Oh yeah, you would think with Shenmue, you was like, oh, I've got my chance to make a new game. Let's just wrap it up. No.
Nah, we've got 3 more of these. Fuck off, have you?
So yeah, I guess that brings us generally to the end of the game. I mean, I think we've kind of covered it as we've gone. It's pretty positive. We enjoyed the game. There are 1 or 2 bits that are maybe starting to show the creaks of old age, but for the most part, it's a game that still feels relevant, still fun, and is worth people's time. Do you agree?
Yeah, it's very much a blueprint game, isn't it? You can see the foundations being laid for games being built in this Unreal Engine. There were so many of them, so many of the cover shooting mechanics, the turret sections, all of that just felt like it set because this is a very early on 360 to me, and I don't remember that vividly, but to me this was the must-have killer app for a 360. I remember this being quite near when it first came out, and the reason I wanted to get one was this game, seeing the trailers of it and thinking, fucking hell, this looks unreal. Engine 3. I don't know when Halo 3 came out, but I was always quite disappointed with that because it never really felt like a true next gen game, whereas this did.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Halo 3 for me is actually
it's a good game.
Like it's a good game. Yeah, much
probably
like Halo 2, I think it's a good game, but that ending kind of ruins it a little bit.
Yeah, see, that's at least them putting a cliffhanger in a second game in the trilogy, rather than, like we said, Gears putting it in the first one.
Yeah,
balls out. I love it. But yeah, what a great game. What a great series. It's got both of us itching to play more Gears, so expect more of these podcasts going forward.
Absolutely. We're going to, it'll probably be in our next list game, but we're going to play through some Horde, which appeared in latter Gears games, and maybe try and rank the Horde modes. Yeah. Which I think will be fun.
That will be fun. It'll be fun to play them all.
Yeah. Do you want to give us what's next on the podcast list, Alex? Oh, we've got a new game to play, right?
Oh, well, yes. So, the next game that we'll be covering, I believe, is going to be Hades, right?
That's right.
That you've suddenly gone into and hopefully got hooked on.
Yep, started to play that.
but there's a bit of a disparity at the moment because I've played that game for over 100 hours and Dave is just starting. So
yeah, I've got some catching up to do.
Yeah, so before that, we'll go back to another top 5 extravaganza for the next episode. And I believe that is going to be the top 5 worst games from good franchises, top 5 mobile games, and top 5 peripherals.
Oh, that's right. I forgot we did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've got that up next.
Yeah, so that's going to be another fun, quick fire top 5 episode coming next. And then following on from that, we'll move on to Hades, which I cannot wait to talk about because that game is unbelievably good.
Yeah.
And addictive.
I'm glad to finally be at it.
Me too.
On it.
I'm glad you are too.
I guess if you want to chat to us about Gears of War or anything else game related, you can follow us on Twitter at WinnerIsYouPod, I think our name is. And you can also, just through brand consistency, because we're amazing like that, you can send us emails at a WinnerIsYouPod
at gmail.com.
gmail.com.
Yep.
And I think that brings us to the end of the episode, Alex, does it?
I believe it does. Yeah, make sure if you're listening to this on whatever platform, please rate, subscribe. We just, any discussion we can get going from this, the more people we can get listening to it, the better. So please help us out.
Yes. And with that, I've been David, he has been Alex, we have been A Winner Is You, and I'm out.
I hope we both do keep gaming.